and welcome to the Fertility Conversations podcast. The goal of this podcast is to create more awareness about infertility and to provide support to people trying to conceive. Thank you for listening today, and we hope you will be encouraged. And now, here is your host, Ola.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Fertility Conversations. Today, we are joined by a lovely guest, Jina, who will be sharing her journey with us today. Jina is also a fertility coach who supports individuals and couples trying to conceive. Her details would also be in the show notes. So welcome, Jina, and thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hi, Ola. Thank you so much for having me. So excited.
Yay. Thank you. And to start off, we usually say, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a foodie that doesn't love to cook. I love to travel. And I'm a people person.
Wonderful. We love having you here.
Great.
So since today we're going to speak about fertility, before we get into that, I'd like to ask, how did you and your spouse meet?
So it's kind of a funny story. We met the first time at a fraternity party where I really didn't want to be bothered. And he kind of saw me standing on the sidelines, asked me to dance. And I said no at first. And then I said yes, and we danced. And he asked me to go out with him, and I said no. And then he said, I am going to call you, and I'm going to say my name is Rumpelstiltskin so you can remember who I am.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Kind of made me laugh and was like, oh, this guy's a little original, so I'm going to go with it. So he called, he left 3 messages, said he was Rumpelstiltskin, and we never talked. And, thought that was kind of strange, but whatever. And so, Christmas Day, I went to a club with some friends, and I saw him dancing with another lady, and I interrupted his dance and asked him to dance. And he kind of looked at me crazy, like, who are you? And I said, Rumpelstiltskin, and he was like, can you just wait over on the side while So later I found out that the girl actually said to him, that must be your girlfriend, so go ahead and, speak with her. And so we've been together ever since. And that was 29 years ago.
29 years ago.
Yes. It's wild.
Wow.
Yeah. It is wild. And, it's in some ways it seems like a long time. In other ways, it's like just yesterday.
Amazing. And you met at a club. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
And so when you first met and when you started dating 29 years ago, did you know right away that you wanted to have kids, or did you have that conversation?
Yes, I knew right away that I wanted to have children. I've always wanted to have kids. I really didn't have any other ambition. So of course we talked about that, and, that was kind of the plan.
Right. Okay. So now let's get into your fertility journey from when you started trying till now. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. So it's a rather long journey, 22 years, but it started with, we actually got pregnant before we got married, and we miscarried. And that was the beginning of, oh, this is not going to work exactly as planned. But we were in college and doing all that. And my husband graduated from college, so we got married, and then we waited a little while, as everybody does. You want to just have that little bit of time when you're married to get to know each other a little bit better. So we waited about 2.5 years, weren't getting pregnant. And so then we decided to get checked out, and it was discovered that my fallopian tube was scarred down. So we tried one IUI, which was unsuccessful. And then we were so kind of stressed out, and like there was a lot going on. We hadn't started our careers yet. It was newly married, all that stuff. So we waited We just stopped and waited for 10 years. And in that time, I went through a little bit of a depression because my identity was kind of shaken up. I thought I was going to be a mom and have, the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence. And that didn't happen. So I had to kind of go back to school and figure out kind of what I wanted to do. And we didn't really know how to work with each other. My husband and I are very different. And so we just, we were clashing and all that kind of stuff. So I went back to school, got my degree in interior design, did that for a couple of years. Then I went into travel. We traveled a lot. We just got to really know each other better and just, got to figure things out. And of course, I'm not suggesting that anybody wait as long as we did. 10 years is a long time, but that's kind of what happened. We just kind of figured out what we liked and enjoyed life. And so when I turned about 35, my mom said to me, if you want to have kids, you might want to start looking at that again. And so I went back to the doctor. And at the time, if I could not have a child on my own, I wanted to adopt. And by this time, I had grown in my spirituality and, learned some things about what God's expectations were. And so we went to the doctor. They did another exploratory. My other fallopian tube was scarred down. The doctor said, if you get pregnant, you're going to have an ectopic pregnancy. I don't suggest you getting pregnant on your own. You should do IVF. So I started over talking the doctor and I said, okay, great. Let's go and adopt. And my husband kind of looked at me. And then when the doctor left, he said, I'd like to try. And I was like, okay, God, this is the test. This is, what you've given me. So I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to follow behind what he's asked and, we'll see what happens. So we did. And we had seven perfect embryos. We put 2 in. I got pregnant the first time. Told the doctor I was going to be pregnant with twins. At 9 weeks, they saw the other twin that had been hiding behind the one. So it's kind of funny. And at 13 weeks, I miscarried. So then at that point, my husband was like, I really only wanted to try one time. We don't have to do this again. But for me, we had 5 embryos. So we did it again. We put 2 embryos in. At 15 weeks, my water broke. And I carried our daughter for another 8 weeks. And she only lived 12 hours because her lungs weren't fully developed. So it was tough, but it was like a really good spiritual growth time for me because I really leaned into my faith at that time. And, I really started fighting for her life and just doing the best I could do for her. And it really was a time when I grew the most, learned my gifts, learned, it was we knew we were possibly losing our daughter, but it was a really good time. So that time period between the twins and my daughter was exactly a year, like to the date. And we said, okay, we're going to take a break. And I had a friend call me and said, hey, her husband was a gynecologist and she worked in the office and this lady wanted to give her baby up, her 4th child. And so we decided we were going to adopt her. And I left the state, went to Tennessee and did that for 3 weeks. And in the hospital, the girl decides to keep the baby. And that was really rough. It was rough because I actually held that baby, and thought, okay, this is it, that kind of thing. So it took a minute for me to kind of come back from that. But I kept coming back to the fact that we had these embryos. So we had 3 embryos left, which we thought were 2 shots. They always wanted to put 2 in because my egg quality was not the best, even though the embryo quality was good. So I was turning older. I was 41 at the time. And I was like, you know what, if we need to finish this out, I'm getting older. And so at 41, we decided we were going to do it again. And one of the last of the 2 times. And they defrosted the embryos and one didn't make it. So it truly was our last time. And they put the 2 in and I got pregnant with my son. And yeah, then the fun began. It was a lot of tests with that. I had a heterotopic that they found at 10 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, 10 weeks. And, so I had surgery to remove that last remaining tube. And my son made it through that. And then at 20 something weeks, whenever they check to see if the veins are all, what the baby has so that they get the proper nutrients and all that stuff. My son only had 2 instead of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were afraid that he would be growth restricted or possibly Downs. And, again, we just had to hold the faith that it was going to be okay. I was gestational diabetic. I had a car accident a month before I had him. It was just one thing after another, but he was born healthy, no problems, absolutely. And we made it through.
Amen. Wow.
So that's the story.
When he was born, what did he, you must have felt relief, okay, you're here.
Yeah,
you were finally here.
It was a sigh of relief, just a woosah, we've been through all this, woosah. And we had a bit of a transition. It was a bit of a transition because, we had been together at that point 25 years of just the 2 of us. So,
yes.
And now you have this child.
I can imagine.
But it was, we just took it on like we did everything else and figured out how to work with each other. And, it just worked out. It was good.
I'm so sorry, first of all, for all your losses. I don't know how you held on during those times. How did you get through those days? Did you have a support group or family? How did you get through all of that?
So, I've always professed that I was a Christian, always, but didn't really have a deep relationship with God. You understand that there's a God, but you don't really understand what you're supposed to be doing and, how he answers prayers and what he esteems and all those things. And so at the beginning, when we lost that first child, I was kind of arrogant and I had this whole plan figured out for my life with an expectation that I deserved a child. And as God was taking me through a journey, it was really changing my perspective of what it means to be a parent and what God wants for our lives. And kind of leaning into that and leaning into all we're given is the present. So all we're given is to do the best that we can do in the moment. And so it really got me out of my expectations and what I thought I should have. And how can I be grateful for what I do have and really use my gifts to the best, in the present. And so by the end of it, when we got to the final 3 embryos that, we thought we were going to use, whatever, I was totally okay with whatever happened. Really whatever happened. I remember when the doctor told us we had the heterotopic and he was like, I've never done this procedure before. It's so unusual, whatever. And I remember being so calm and I just looked at him and said, it's going to be okay. Whatever it is. And I was, staring at the fact of maybe losing another child, but I knew that whatever it was going to be okay. It really was. So just a transformation through the whole journey of letting go of your expectations and being really grateful and present for what is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That sounds like so much grace because I don't know how else
you
could come to that kind of understanding. Yeah.
For sure.
And a heterotopic pregnancy, being the baby that's here now. I had a heterotopic pregnancy, and I know that it's extremely dangerous. And, to have a surgery like that in the middle of middle of the other pregnancy in the uterus, and to have that come true to successful, that was amazing. That's God.
Yeah,
because
it
again,
is.
yeah.
It is.
Go
And
ahead.
I'm sorry about your loss. I mean, I know how scary that is and how,
It is.
you made it so far and you're like, what happened here, And so I know what that feels like. And it's so wild that we even have connected with two people having a heterotopic because it is so unusual.
It
But
is.
yeah, it is.
I haven't actually met it. maybe one more person on Instagram. So it's amazing to have, and then to actually have that whole process led to your baby, the baby in the uterus survive. That's a miracle.
Yeah,
That's
it
amazing.
really is a miracle. I don't take it for granted. I mean, I still
Yeah.
look at him and like, I cannot believe you're here because it could have gone the other way. But I will say that at that time, my spirituality was really strong, and I knew that I needed to follow my authority. And what happened during that pregnancy was each pregnancy I had spotted. And this particular pregnancy was no different. And then when I did, my husband was saying, I really want you to take some time off from work with this pregnancy. And then my husband is like the most gentle man. He would never give me like rules, but he gave me 3 rules. And he said, I want you to take a nap every day. I want you to not carry a big, heavy purse. And I want you to, if you go to the store, I want you to carry no more than two bags. That's it. And I thought, wow, that's kind of weird that, it's weird, strange request, but I'm going to do it. So when my doctor found the heterotopic, she actually said to me, I don't know how you're still walking around. And I just looked at my husband and was like, oh my goodness, like I followed everything he told me to do. And I think that helped us because I was rested. I wasn't like doing a whole bunch. And, of course, hindsight is 2020. You can look back and say whatever, but I really believe that helped us. I really do. So, it's just a story about you have to follow your intuition, what you think is best for your body. I did that a lot in my pregnancies, a lot.
Amazing. We're so thankful for your son.
Yeah,
such a testimony. And then even thinking about when you're speaking about your journey and the whole process of you wanting to adopt, and then traveling there, being in the hospital, and having the mom change her mind at the last minute. Wow. Yeah. That must have been, I cannot even imagine how that must have.
Yeah, I think that once you make a decision about a way to go, you really have to lean into the process, because you're not going to go into that the same. You're going to go in one way and you're going to come out a different way, no matter what, even if you don't really make a decision. So knowing that, you really have to lean into your intuition and accept what is. First, you have to accept what is, the actual thing you're going through. And then the second thing is you really move on. Okay, well, this is what's happening. Let me do a little bit of research so I can figure it out. I was like the research queen. So I would, when I picked out my maternal fetal medicine doctor, I actually researched her studies. And when I interviewed her, which I suggest anybody do, I actually told her what her studies were. Like, I know you did this.
Oh my.
Yeah, like she was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But I had a really good relationship with my doctor. Like, I really, asked a lot of questions. I think you should be with somebody that you can ask any questions of. And once I did that, ultimately, I went with what my God tuition was. You know, what I really felt innately was the best thing to do, always. And the combination of the two, I think, is what helped us a lot with a lot of different issues. I mean, I could tell you a million stories oh, about how I would have to, like, okay, this is what the paper says. And
10 years seems like such a long time.
it does,
Were
but
you both that was okay?
So when we did the IUI and it didn't work, it really was because we didn't know how to work with each other. So there were things I needed to do, things he needed to do, and it kind of just all fell apart because we didn't have a plan. And we weren't ready to adapt our lives. And I was, I was 26, 27. So we were young and hadn't really lived life and all that kind of stuff. And we decided, and I will say that I decided to just stop. We didn't plan on stopping for 10 years. What happened was I kind of went through an identity crisis because all I ever wanted to be was a mother. So I had to reconcile the fact that that might not happen. And then I went through a depression. I had to get help for that. And then once I did, then I was like, okay, well, now I have to figure out what I'm going to do. Because if I don't have a child, I need to have a life. So I went back to school. My husband got, more in his career, bought a house. Then I decided, okay, I don't want to do this career. And so then I got into travel, and then we just started having a lot of fun. We just enjoyed our friends, our family. We partied hard. I mean, just had a really good time. I mean, it was really a very sweet time of just getting to know each other better. We learned what our strengths were and our weaknesses. We just did a lot of growing in that time period. So we really had gotten to the point where if we didn't have a child, we would have been okay because our life was so full. So when my mom asked me that question, I had a different perspective. And I knew that I didn't want to be the person I was the first time when we miscarried and I was, all kinds of crazy. But I didn't want to give up my life. And so, I just really was like, okay, well, I am going to be totally present this time in this journey. And I'm not going to stop doing the things that we like to do. And so that's what we did. We did infertility, but we didn't let it control our lives. And we still traveled. We still did everything that we were doing before.
I love all of that, because when you say it like that, 10 years doesn't seem so long after all, right? Because, you were having a good time, you were traveling, you were partying, you were getting to know each other.
Yeah.
Which is important.
I think what happens is that when you don't have a plan going into infertility, which nobody has, right? Because it kind of happens to you, you're living your life, and then all of a sudden you're in infertility. So then all these darts are like basically coming at you and you're just fighting off the darts. You're just trying to like go through the process. And because it's so unusual, it's one of those processes that affects every aspect of your life. And so when you don't have this plan, it just kind of takes over. And you you're living, but you're not being present. You're working for this thing in the future, and you're just losing time and life, like whatever. So, it's my goal to like show women that the minute you're going into this journey, that you really need to have a plan. One of the things that my husband and I did before we put in our last embryos was we really sat down and formulated a whole plan of our life, like what it would be like if we didn't get pregnant. And I was really comfortable with that. Like, okay, it's not going to be bad. This is what it's going to be. And I'm not going to be scared of this process because if it doesn't happen, we're going to have a full life. And that made me empowered and very at peace with whatever happened. So
I love that. I really love that. And that kind of takes me to when you said that that's why you work with women now and telling them that it's important to have a plan at the beginning of the journey. So it's amazing that from all your experience and all that you went through, now you're a fertility coach, giving back and helping other women, which is just amazing. How did that come about? Why did you decide to do that?
Okay, so I got to be 100% honest. It's not what I originally wanted to do. I thought I was going to be an influencer. So COVID hit and I got furloughed from my job because I was in travel, and we know where that went. And, I started relooking at some things like, oh, what can I do? And there's a lot of things that I could do. I designed cabinetry, so I could do that. I cook really well. I could do something with that.
Nice.
There's just a lot of different. Yeah. So even though I don't like to cook, it's kind of like a bittersweet thing. I love food, but I don't love to cook, but I could have still worked with it. And I love fashion. Nice. And so I started talking with a branding coach. I thought I was going to go the influencer route and start branding these different interests. Well, at the beginning of the year, in January, I started doing some vision board parties and some self-discovery, and all the people in my life were like, no, you really need to be helping people with infertility. And I just realized that the branding my interest was not working. It wasn't. I couldn't really get it off going. And this thing kept nagging at me like, I really need to be helping women with this. So I kind of stepped into it. And then I was like, you know what, this is good. And along the way, I've had little signs and people just, talking to people about different things. And so I've been in it since about January, and it has just like taken off. And I'm really excited that anything that I went through can help somebody else. So,
yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what services do you provide now from your fertility coaching?
So I am doing some one-on-one coaching. And I'm also going to be doing a challenge July 15th on helping women figure out what is their war, what is their infertility war. And then at the end of the month, July 30th, I will be doing a 6-week program called the Warrior Method. And that will be going through what your war is, coming up with your own plan of how to tackle that and how to deal with opposition and just different things that we deal with in infertility. And it'll be a community of women where we talk with each other and have labs and that kind of thing.
Amazing. And how do people register for this or get?
So the registration will be coming out next week.
Okay.
Next week or the following week for the War Challenge. That's a free challenge, and it'll be about a 3-day event where we just go through a series of questions and trying to figure out what your infertility war is, so you can at least see where you are in it. And you will be able to register on that on Jina's Journeys.com, which is my website. There'll be a registration link there starting next week. So, and then after that, about 2 weeks after that, then the Warrior Method workshop will begin.
Sounds exciting. So people can go on your website to register and get ready for the Warrior Challenge. And so why did you choose to name your war?
So
Warrior Challenge?
Yeah, I fought with
I love the name. I love it. I think it's amazing. So I just wondered.
So I fought with this a lot, because some people there's so much stigma around infertility, which is really sad because it isolates people and, makes them feel like they're the only ones. But we know that they're not, because 1 in 8 couples experience infertility and 1 in 4 have experienced some type of miscarriage or, something like that. So it's really sad. But in my 22 years of going through infertility, what I've realized is that it is a war, and you have to look at it as such and take responsibility for how you respond to the war so that it doesn't take over. And so that's how I came up with the warrior method. And then the WAR is really just kind of figuring out, where you are, assessing where you are and what's your reality of that. So it's just an acronym that breaks down those different areas that helps you realize your war and how to fight it.
Love it. And anyone, since this is happening online, does that mean anyone can register then from here in Nigeria or anywhere else in the world?
Yes.
Everyone is okay. Perfect. All right. So looking forward to that. And these details will also be in the show notes so people can actually click on that and register.
That's great.
That'll be perfect. And in your journey, what you've learned so far, is there any one quote or word of affirmation that you found really helpful during the journey?
Yes. So it's a scripture, and the scripture is Proverbs 3:6, and it is, "In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path." And that was just something I held on to a lot in my journey that kind of, took the focus off of me and helped me realize that it is all about, God and what he wants for our lives. And if we know that, then we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Okay with whatever.
Well said, Jina. And looking back now to, knowing all that going back to, that Jina that your husband met and was talking to, what would you tell her, Jina, before all of this?
I would tell her to calm down. First of all, you are high energy. No, I'm just kidding. No, I would tell her to just really be present, and learn how to do that. Because, of course, looking back, I could tell my younger self all kinds of things, but so much of it is just about going through the journey. It just is, like you only know what you know, and you can't know more until you know what you know. So it's like you just have to go through it, and you just have to learn how to really be present and use your intuition based with your knowledge.
Love it. Thank you for sharing, Jina.
Yeah.
And as a wrap up, are there any words of encouragement or advice for anyone listening currently going through infertility?
So 2 things. I would say first, assess, your present state when you realize you're in infertility. So kind of look at your relationships, kind of where they are, your job situation, your, not necessarily in this order, but your relationship with your significant other, that kind of thing. Because you kind of need to take an assessment and figure out kind of where you're at with that. And then get some help, some support. You might not be as vocal as I was, because I was very vocal from day one. Like, I don't know, that's just my personality. But you need to find at least a couple of people that you can depend on and get some professional help as well. So that would be my advice.
That's great advice. Thank you. And when you actually mentioned people as well, in terms of finding support, I wondered, I know I said that was the last question, one more, but I wondered, how did this impact yourself and your husband, your relationship, that whole journey and your experience?
So a little background, and just to give you a perspective, I went to school for interior design. My husband is an engineer, so it's like 2 total different spectrum. I am a big picture person. He's a details person. And so in the beginning of our marriage, that used to be like a point of, like crashing. And that was the issue in the beginning of the infertility journey, because he wanted to do things a certain way and I wanted to do things a certain way. After the 10 years, and learning each other. When we came back together, we realized, okay, what we really need to do is leverage each other's strengths. So
Yeah.
I would, do the research and make the appointments. He showed up, and did the shots, and he was the calm to my storm, because I'm very like emotional and out there, but he's very solid and very like, okay, calm down. Let's look at this, logistically, logically, and figure it out
Yeah.
and whatever. So once we learned to do that and work each other and not make the other person feel guilty about what they weren't good at, we were okay. And it was the difference between us being successful the second time around, as far as not losing it. When I say success, I'm saying we weren't like crashing and fighting and all that stuff. That was the difference between that time and the very first time with the IUI.
Wow, that's such an important question. I'm so glad I got to ask you, because that's the reality for as infertility in relationships. It does have such a huge impact, and many times each person has a different idea of how to proceed, and how they handle things, how to handle emotions, how to communicate.
Yeah.
So I'm
you
so
have
glad that
out, you have to figure out your communication model, and you just cannot hold the other person responsible for something they're not good at. Like I wanted my husband to do certain things, like book all the appointments, because you got a million appointments and all this stuff. And that's not his mindset. It's just not. And so finally we were like, okay, we're just going to do a Google Calendar, and I'm just going to plug it in. But one thing, as the woman that goes through it, because no matter what your infertility is, the woman is the one that does the most as far as her body is concerned, right? So the one thing that I did do was I was like, I need somebody with me at every appointment, whether that be you or my mom, my support team or whatever. But that was one thing that I just put my foot down. And I think as the person that's physically going through the most, you got to have a couple of things where you're like, okay, this is just like something that I have to have. You got to figure that out as well. So
thank you so much for sharing. That is so important.
and
I really love the fact that you also said that you shouldn't blame the person for something they're not good at. Such a big point. Very, very important.
Yeah, it's in 25. Well, we'll be married 25 years next May. So I always say 25 years, whatever. But
it is.
I'm rounding it up. But in that time period, I mean, that's just a marriage lesson. Like, you just cannot hold somebody responsible for their weaknesses. The point of being with somebody is that you pull both your strengths together to become better together than you could be apart, right? So like my weaknesses, are the opposites of his strengths, so we just try to pull the good stuff together. And that's what's worked, even though we're very different.
Thank you so much, Gina, for sharing that. I feel like I just had like a little bit of marriage counseling. I feel empowered right now. I feel empowered, like, hey, okay. Yeah. Like, I'm going to tell my husband, okay, I'm not going to stress you about that thing anymore. I know that's not your strength, So it's good, actually, the way you said it, to think about it that way.
Yeah. I mean, if you can figure it out, just, I don't know, we have like gotten counseling, we've written it down. But the times when we've shined the most has been when we've done that. Like, just don't even like try to make somebody be somebody that they're not. Just don't. It doesn't work.
Well said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gina.
Absolutely.
It has been amazing having you on here. I know this took 3 times.
I didn't think you were going to bring that up, but I
had to because, whoa.
I have, one thing infertility has taught me is to let stuff go, and it will be whatever it is. It's just, we put so much pressure on ourselves to make things happen. and they don't have to. You just got to go with the flow and know that whatever happens, ultimately it's for the good. So it was gonna work out, or it wasn't, but I'm glad it did.
I'm so glad, because I'm like, is this like, what is going on? So third time, thank you so much, Jina, for being so patient and understanding and so flexible, and for sharing your story with us today. Wow. I keep saying wow because I just can't find the right words to express how strong and, you know, how much grace is on your life as well, how inspiring your story is, because it's amazing. You know, of course, when I say amazing, not amazing with all that happened in terms of the losses, but to come through all of that and be here today, helping so many other women with their own journey.
That's really sweet to say, Ola, but I feel like I'm not any different than anyone else, other than the fact that I let go of my expectations and really learned how to be present. That's all. You know, and anybody can do that. You can, I was a spoiled, arrogant, just selfish young lady, and just had an I deserve attitude. And it wasn't just this, but it was like in my life, and so at the end I had to let all that go and just be grateful for what is and lean into that. And I always tell people that it's important that that even if I hadn't had my son, I would have been okay. We would have been okay. We would have, because we had made a life that was going to be good no matter what. And I think that's important. I think when you're going through this journey, you have to have that, because you're not guaranteed, the child. You're not. But anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So.
Thank you so much, Jina.
You're welcome.
For sharing your story with us today.
Absolutely.
So many I have been encouraged, and so many of the listeners will be, I'm sure. So thank you so much. And thank you for all that you're doing to also support others in this community in their own journeys, and for sharing so much wisdom about relationships as well. I think it's so important, because infertility does play such a huge role and can really impact people's relationships. So sharing your wisdom, that aspect as well, is so highly appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. It has been an honor to be able to have this time.
Yes, thank you so much. And we look forward to joining your Warrior Challenge and getting all the skills and support from you. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure having you on here, and we look forward to having you again in the near future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Fertility Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Fertility Conversations. If there are any topics you would like to have discussed, please send an email to fertilityconversations@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you again for listening. Take care of yourself and do stay hopeful.